All right, I think we got this. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Houston, We Have a Problem, live cast number 11. Coming to you live on a Friday night because you have nothing better to do with your lives like me. Welcome. So, hopefully, microphone. You guys are going to yell. No matter what I do with the microphone, you guys are going to yell at me. But hopefully, this works for you. Okay, so this week kind of just went, and not much happened. At least price-wise, but news-wise, things are taking shape here. AMC got put on the reg show list because they have so many FTDs and no one's even bothering to cover. They just keep climbing each day. No, has anyone gotten their preferred shares yet for Torchlight from the merger? Because I have not, and I've had my shares for months. My guess is that the brokerages are going, I don't know where to put these because there's so many synthetics out there. I don't know what's going to come of that at all. It's just they create so many synthetic shares that, I mean, they're continuing to short a stock that has not reconciled like the QSIP and all those things yet, and they all know that these preferred shares are coming for the dividends, and they can't be counterfeited. So I think they're just doing what they do. It's like they have one button, and that button is continue to short, and that's all they do over and over and over and over. So yeah. So if anyone else has cool things to talk about, other than just the fact that everything just traded sideways, even though it should be just skyrocketing, if this was happening to other stocks, like if we found out that Microsoft had been on the FTD list for 5 days in a row, it would be at $20,000 today. But because it's, stocks are always on these FTD lists, no one's really doing anything about it. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to the chat lines here. White House, this is from Jelani. White House says, concerned about impact of high oil prices on American consumers. Well, for one, I don't know if you guys saw that the ocean's on fire. Pipeline burst, dumping out, 700,000 barrels a day of oil, and it's on fire. And so the ocean is just like bubbling in the Gulf of Mexico. And they got 3 little fire ships trying to like blow water on it, but that's not going to do anything. We have sanctions against Iran, which we could have not had if a previous president hadn't torn that stuff up. And we've got sanctions against Venezuela, and those are 2 of the largest oil producers in the world. So if you're concerned about oil prices, maybe like stop sanctioning nations and come to peace agreements with them. I don't know. That's my thought. Okay. What's happening with GME? What can we expect? Volume is low. Why aren't hedge funds increasing their positions at these prices? This is from Candide. Hedge funds won't do anything about. They won't buy this stock to close positions until they're forced to. Because right now they can keep shorting and shorting and shorting and shorting and shorting and doing that forever because no one's making them stop. So if no one's going to make them stop, they're just going to keep doing it. From Citadel. Thoughts on Rory Kitty going silent on Twitter, and what if GME does not provide the crypto dividend? Will MOAS happen? I don't know why DFU went silent. He may have gone on vacation. I mean, holiday week this week. My weekend's totally busy. I'm playing the Old Timers baseball game and doing barbecues and all that stuff. I got my 4th of July fireworks shirt on. I don't know why Warren Kitty went silent. He does have periods where he kind of quiets down for a while before he makes an appearance again. So I can't quite speculate as to why he may have gone silent. But I think the crypto dividend is going to happen. And if it doesn't, then we're just looking at a longer period of time, possibly to force the MOAS to happen. But I think the crypto dividend is there to sort of jumpstart everything, right? That's his goal. Get that sucker up there. Dr. Stonk, is the DTCC complicit in the resetting of FTDs? If so, do you think they will face repercussions? Huh. I hadn't really thought about that. Because the FTDs are reported by FINRA through the SEC, right? And the DTCC are the ones controlling the electronic shares that are being recorded as not being delivered. A lot of the FTDs, things will appear as FTDs on the list, but those are from market makers, and then they just kind of ignore them, and they just kind of like reset and go away. If the DTCC is responsible for that, I don't know. They may have some hand in doing that. I mean, they're the ones that control how those stocks get moved around. At the end of the day, they're the clearinghouse. But I can't speculate as to exactly what their role would be. I have to maybe sit and ponder on that, Dr. Stonk. But it's a good question. It's a very good question. Possibly one for someone who might have more insider access than some lowly peasant like me. Stephen Hancock, off topic. Will they ever find anything of substance on Oak Island? Always enjoy their show. No. I think if there's something of substance to be found on Oak Island, they would have found it by now. I mean, what they managed to find is a sinkhole with like fossils and old pieces of wood in it. But beyond that, I don't know. I mean, before that was even a show, my brother was obsessed with Oak Island, and he watched like 10 seasons of it. And after a while, I was like, I don't think anything's there. But what it might be is that they're looking at the wrong place, because the Vikings came to North America. They came through there. Maybe they need to be looking for other archaeological sites that might have had, Viking presence at the time. I don't know, but it's a good question. I mean, if they spend 50 years there and never find anything, I'm pretty certain that they have gone through everything they could to find what they need to find. So, I don't know. They made a lot of money off the TV show. That's good for them. Bad Mama Jamma 618. Thank you so much. Could you do me a favor? Rocky Outcrop is an amazing guy, and his knowledge deserves seen. Would you do a one-on-one with him soon? Yeah, he reached out to me today. I think he reached out. By the time I read it, he was probably asleep. And when he gets back to me, I might be asleep. So it'll be one of those things, because he's in Scotland, right? So yeah, we're trying to get something together. I'm probably going to be going on the Gist again this week, and having Josh Hamill from the Gist onto my show, because he's written a book about the GameStop squeeze, and we're going to talk about it. I just have to learn how to actually host people, because I'm always the one joining someone else who's hosting it all. I have to just figure out how do I host somebody for an interview. That's what I'm working on. But thank you, Bad Bama Jamma. We're working on it. We're gonna get something together with those guys. So awesome, cool. Thank you. I got a message earlier from Space Monkey. Space Monkey kind of had an epiphany today. Someone was asking like why the hedge funds short attacked today, and Space Monkey was like, it's a bold strategy, dropping the price on payday. So and he kind of has this philosophy now that that the shorts are betting us on losing interest because it's not our jobs, our lives, so to speak. Well, they're wrong yet again. I think the ape community has grown into more than just fucking over hedgies or making millions. It has become a culture, a lifestyle, if you will, to buy and hold. That's it. We are changing the landscape of the investment world. Win or lose, I believe this culture has been created. Doesn't care. I think we care more about each other than we do the goal at this point. He said he sold 10 AMC to prepare for his terrible circumstances on calls he had, and instantly felt guilt. He felt like 4 million people were hating him. What did he do? Well, he took the loss, and then the next day went out and bought some more shares. he doesn't want to let anyone down, and he basically feels like, you know, this meme stonk community that people are you know, all of you and those spending their time on Reddit and Twitter and talking about this stuff, it has become a culture. I mean, I bet it's on most of your brains most of the day, thinking like, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? What can we do? What can we do? What's we're investigating and researching and reading more about the workings of the financial markets than most people who have degrees in this stuff at this point. It's pretty phenomenal, the volume of interest in, you know, it began as screw over the hedge funds, and the side effect, the material that gets mined along with it is, yeah, we might get a big giant win out of it. But number three is, I think everyone recognizes that we need to fundamentally change the way the markets are run and regulated. We have so many issues with regulation in this country when it comes to the markets, and it's designed specifically to screw over the retail investor, the moms and pops, and the little guy. And, you know, we need better. We need better for our society than this. And, you know, there's going to be a revolution one way or the other. And the easiest thing for them to do is to just fix the stupid system before we fix it for them. That's my Viva la Revolution speech. Okay, PB. Do you know of any stock in the past that was enforced under the threshold securities rule, which had significant upward price action after? No. Most of those, the opposite happens. It's mostly stocks on the OTC that are just getting bombarded by these short hedge funds and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And those short hedge funds don't care about being on that threshold list because the stock price is going to disappear anyway. It's interesting for AMC to be on the threshold securities list because their price is, you know, it's a steady, highly traded stock with lots of volume by retail investors and others, and it's the outlier on that list. Usually when they're on that list, they're garbage stocks that have been short attacked so much that the companies themselves can't really do anything about it. So I think it's interesting that notice is being paid. The AMC's on that list right now, and their price isn't cratering. So that's one thing that the AMC has going for on that list is like, hey, we shouldn't be on that list. That's what it's saying. It should be for garbage stocks, not for stocks that millions of people in America know is worth more than it is right now. So that's a good question, though. Okay. Oh, I have my first instance today. It's a side note news, where somebody recognized me from YouTube. Guy was like, "You're Houston Wade, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, well, watch all YouTube videos." So you guys are out there. I ran into someone who recognized me. That was so weird. Okay, Fred Berger. I still love that name. Blockchain-based market? Question mark. Slow transactions to once every 2 to 5 seconds. No naked shorting possible. Create a crypto coin that's actually useful. Use the base to find the computer power. I do think crypto, blockchain will come to the stock market. But they won't do it until they do some sort of rules targeting naked shorting. Because selling naked shares when you've got a blockchain will just mess up the whole system. I also agree with slowing down trading. I don't think high-frequency trading should be allowed. I think it should be even slower than that. I think 10 minutes. You buy a stock, you can't do anything with it for 10 whole minutes and slow it way down. Because you and I can't even trade a stock in 5 seconds. Why should other people be allowed to do it? It should basically be, if retail doesn't have access to it, no one else can use that system. So until they figure out a way for us to do high frequency trading, then no one should be allowed to do high frequency trading. And yes, no naked shorting possible. I don't think naked shorting should exist in any way, shape, or form. Market makers shouldn't be allowed to, create liquidity by selling stock that doesn't exist to meet that demand. I think the demand needs to make the price go up, and that's how it should be. That's how it should happen. Yeah. And create a crypto coin that has an actual useful use behind use case behind the computer power. It'd be interesting to see how after what I think is going to happen with crypto in the coming months, have just a big correction before it probably skyrockets again, to see how crypto gets used later as these systems kind of adapt to the future. Because I do think there's a lot of crypto malfeasance that needs to be regulated, which kind of defeats the purpose of crypto. But the reason why we've got market regulations in the first place is because it slows down the boom bust cycle, and we need to slow that down overall, to not just protect people, but to protect society as a whole. Because if we've got these big boom busts, we get explosions in crime, lots of lost jobs, food insecurity, all sorts of things happen if we don't keep it, keep those boom busts from getting too bad. We can keep a nice steady growth for longer periods of time. Okay, back to the chats here. All right, says sounds great, excellent. Oh, Bossy, you like this? This is one of my favorite shirts. I love this shirt. I wear it every year around 4th of July. Monkey Wrench Studios, Houston, if you have a P.O. box, announce it. I should get a P.O. box. I don't have one. I sent a couple people to my dad's P.O. box, and he's like, stop doing that. So maybe this week I'll get a P.O. box, and then I can announce one, and you guys can, I don't know, send me anthrax in the mail or something. That's a joke. Don't send me anthrax in the mail. Okay. No. I don't know what those are for. Something got deleted. Okay. Freddy Burger. Blockchain market. Pair with a token. Okay. For solve. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, why not? Why not blockchain? Have a blockchain with a token for solve. That'd be interesting. I think that there should be like proof of work. I talked about this a while ago, but we have all this massive computer power going towards proof of work and transactions for solving these mathematical puzzles that really don't do anything, but they take a huge amount of computer power to unlock crypto. I think we need to move to a system where we've got supercomputers that need to crunch numbers anyway. You've got your computer modeling for weather. You've got your computer modeling for nuclear power, for modeling explosions, for crunching data for SETI at home or the Human Genome Projects, things like that. Like, why can't we use these supercomputers to solve life's riddles and have it generate work worth tokens or coins via that? Like, why should it take so much Ethereum to maintain a transaction when what they could be doing is actually solving life's, the problems of the universe and benefiting society as a whole? That'd be my take. That's what we should be doing. Candide, can you talk more about what happened this week? Yeah, what happened this week? I mean, it's not too deep. We saw that AMC went onto the threshold list because the FTDs are just piling up. And that threshold list is usually populated with OTC stocks, small cap stocks that are being murdered, and being murdered in a rather gruesome short attack fashion. The fact that AMC went onto that meant a whole bunch of groups the week before that should have been buying stock because of a gamma squeeze due to all of those shares going in the money the previous Friday on 618 didn't. They didn't go out and buy them. And instead they short attacked and sold more synthetics and borrowed more and never delivered. What we might be seeing is more and more of this with stocks similar to AMC and GME is that they might just be like, we're in this so deep, we're just not going to deliver anything. And just go and go and go and go until someone finally makes us do our job. And by then we've offshored so much cash that who cares? You know, if they can make hundreds of millions or billions of dollars off of this, and then when it comes time to pay the piper, what's going to happen to them? Nothing. They have millions offshore that they stored, and they just walk away, declare bankruptcy and walk away. All these big name hedge funds, they'll just vanish and they won't care. I think that's kind of what we're seeing, and we're seeing the price get pushed downwards by these short attacks, and you know they're gonna do as long as they can until someone forces them to actually cover, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for that point. Okay, Timothy Smith, do you think there's still hope for Torch? Yes. I am sitting and holding and waiting because the preferred share that goes to each one of those Torch stocks before the merger for the dividend, those can't be counterfeited. Now, they were supposed to go into everyone's account starting on Wednesday, and I don't know anyone who has gotten any in their account. So I'm not sure how a failure to deliver works with those preferred shares, but all the synthetics that are generated, if they don't get those preferred shares by the rules of the DTCC, their subsidiaries, and the SEC and everyone else, automatically every single one of those shares should be recalled. And the groups that shorted those shares to create those synthetics will be margin called automatically. I'm not sure what the time frame is for that, because when a preferred share like this has been given in the past, it hasn't been when it's been shorted as highly as Torch was. And now that Torch has become metamaterial, will mean that the metamaterial stock will be what everyone has to buy to close those positions. So right now, you know, metamaterial is floating in that $7 range. We may see it drop more until finally everyone has to close those positions. But we're just kind of waiting because like none of this stuff is transferring as fast as everyone had told us it would, and we're just kind of like in this doldrum while we wait for something to happen. So I think there's some clouds on the horizon with some lightning strikes coming. I can almost see them from here. So I'm just sitting and waiting. And right now, metamaterial itself is sitting on a gigantic pile of cash. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars. They're hiring like crazy. They're like building up their production facility. The one problem I think they have with the production facility is that construction costs are so high at the moment, and there's like giant wait times for them to receive materials. So, but you know, that's all coming, and they've got so much money. Why these short hedge funds continue to short companies that are sitting on piles of cash is just stupid. But that's the only thing they know how to do. They don't really seem to know how to do anything else. And here we are. We're just sitting and waiting. So yes, there's hope for Torch. I'm still bullish on Torch. That's where I am. Not financial advice. Not financial advisor. And you know, while it's still warm up here, it's not a million degrees. It's much more comfortable than it has been. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Dr. Stonk, what's a good sleeper stock for a light YOLO next week? Oh man, putting me on the spot. I mean, I don't really think it's so much a sleeper stock because I've talked about it before, but the action with costs is always weird because it definitely follows the like GME and AMC, and the weird thing about it is that shorts cannot cover their positions on costs because there's no options available. So they can't use the options market to cover their positions and kind of hide what they're doing. And the float is so small. There's only 2 million and some change shares available in the entire for all of costs, and it doesn't take much to move that price. I mean, costs went to 127 during the baby squeeze. Right now it's like $21. It hit 40 earlier at the end of May. It squeezes just like all other things, but then they can't cover in those positions, and we'll see days where the volume's like 8 million, and there's only 2 million shares and some change. So, you know, I'm interested to see. I need to dive deeper into what the corporate guys are doing at costs, if they're paying attention at all to how their stock is moving, because they're they're a smaller company. They make basic headphones and consumer electronics and things like that. They don't have a giant market, but because their stock was shorted so much, and because those of us in this ape community have bought and held, that the price still gets valued higher and higher as time goes on. I'm interested to see how cost shakes out if GME and AMC get just pumped as a result of being on the threshold lists and the crypto dividend, and how much cost follows them as a result. So Dr. Stonk, that's my sleeper. That's my sleeper pick. Yeah. Bad Mama Jamma. Thought on Naked. Naked the company, or just naked being naked? Naked clothing. I think the company Naked. I think they're grouped in with the rest of these meme stocks, with BlackBerry and Bed Bath and Beyond, and a lot of these brands that have been sort of shorted to oblivion. As far as being naked, I'm pro naked people. I think it should be allowed to be naked. As far as naked shorting, no, boo. So whichever naked, that's all those financials for all the different nakeds I could do. Okay. Black Sharpless. Do you think the SEC really has our backs, or are these rule changes just smoke and mirror? Yeah, I if with these rule changes, most of these rules are put forward by the private regulators, the clearinghouses, the stock exchanges, and then they get submitted to the SEC saying, "Hey, we're going to change this," and the SEC goes, "All right," and those get changed. The enforcement of those rules directly would be by those clearinghouses and exchanges. We're not quite seeing those rules be enforced that way. The SEC, I don't think, has really done what they should. I think they, if they're investigating, they need to move a lot faster. They need to be demanding and subpoenaing more information at a higher rate than they are, and they need to be hiring investigators as much as possible, because there's so much malfeasance going on that they can't keep up. It's like they're spread too thin. They're like, oh my God, you need to go to prison. You need to go to prison. You need to go to prison. But I only got assigned to this task right here, and they really seem to focus more on small scale crimes. There was a pump and dump with a pink sheeted stock a couple months ago, where some guy like in Arizona made $700,000 pump and dumping some pink sheet stock that was bankrupt, and the SEC just came down that dude with all their might and arrested him and threw him in prison. Well, cool, like that should be part of your job, but it's like there are much bigger fish to fry. Why didn't you focus on those guys first? Why didn't you focus on the serial killer and not the jaywalker? Um, you know, it's like they're terrible at triage or something. I think it's the SEC's biggest problem, is that they'll gladly arrest the small guy, but when they have to deal with the people who can afford like entire law firms to work for them, the SEC just doesn't do much. And if so, they slap on the wrist. They find ways to make a deal. You spend 1 year at Club Fed, and then you get to keep your trading license or whatever. They do weird things like that. Dr. Stonk bought some VXX calls for September, thinking of buying more. Weather plays will hedge market correction or crash. Interesting. Yes. I would look the VXX. For those who don't know, it kind of is like an anti-spy. Uh, it's it kind of bets against the the general index funds in the market, like the Standard and Poor's. I think the weekly bets that we've seen with HYG, with those corporate junk bonds, ETFs, I think those are kind of playing the same markets. If you have puts and stuff like that, the big collapse I think everyone was betting for as a result of all these rule changes obviously never materialized. I would look in credit default swaps for if you allowed to trade those. That's the thing, is that a lot of us retail traders don't have access to stuff like that. You might talk to your brokerage. If you're with one of the big brokerages like Schwab or Fidelity or TD, you might be able to get permission to trade things like credit default swaps. That's sort of like betting that debt will go bad. Those are good plays. What else? What else would be a good hedge? I mean, in general, if you're playing VXX, you can probably do puts against regular market players, the blue chips and the indexes, right? Because you just bet it's going to go down, and that's how you hedge that bet. Yeah, those would probably be some plays. Just you have to look at who benefits when things go bad, right? Gold benefits. So if you buy gold before there's a big crash, the price will go up during that correction. We saw gold, hit $2,000 an ounce easily when spring of last year, when COVID caused the market to drop like 37%. Those stables a lot of people go towards. And I don't know, hard alcohol. People drink away their sorrows. It's Everclear, by the way. Yeah. O2 WRX fan. How bad do you think I'm screwed on my July 16th calls? Be honest, I'm down so much. They're almost worthless. What were those calls in? I don't know what those calls were in particularly. Were they calls for GME? AMC? I don't know. July 16th. That's 2 weeks-ish away. Yeah, 2 weeks. I'd be interesting to see what happens for the 16th if the crypto dividend comes out on the 14th. Do you think the price play would? Do you think they would get short attacked? Like it'd probably get short attacked like crazy if that's still available to them. But I'm curious. I'm curious about that. Yeah. Okay. This is Rick King. I saw a screenshot on AMC stocks or Super Stonk subs that listed like 19 or more different FTD types. I don't link. We'll look. Yeah, look for those. There's different FTDs because there's FTDs that come from naked selling. There's FTDs that come from options, right? They have different time periods. Some are like T13, some are T21, and so on. that's and there's different rules that apply to them. And then when you get to like T35 with the market maker guys, they just like wipe the board clean. They just shake the etch a sketch as if they don't exist anymore, and they keep playing. So that's yeah. The FTD types are interesting, and there's a lot of them out there, and some that I couldn't even name because I don't know about them. This is from CD Metamaterial. Do you think Elon joint venture on Tuesday will be announced during company webcast? I've heard rumors about that. That there's some sort of nanotech thing between them, and there is a Tesla venture that's like in the same business park, I guess, where Metamaterial currently is in Nova Scotia. I don't know. It would be interesting to see if there's some sort of joint venture. I don't know. That's a good speculation. There's tech coming out of Metamaterial that, the things I know about that they do is they have the laser glasses, the glasses that block lasers, and they can also coat canopies of fighter jets and stuff like that. They have this machine that they can print sort of these microscopic matrices onto film. They can be then adhered to glass, so it can be a heating element, it can be an antenna, it can be I don't know. That stuff's a little beyond me. And then they have something they want to bring to the market, which can sort of be like a Fitbit that reads medication levels or glucose or something that pain-free and without stabbing and in real time that they're working on. And that those markets are huge. The diabetes market in America is gigantic, and that's also something that No Labs I talked about them. It's my friend's company a couple months ago. They were being short attacked down to like $1, and they jumped 200-300% since then, because they keep announcing like, hey, we're getting approved for these patents. We've got FDA approval coming up on our devices. And it gets really hard to keep shorting these companies when they've got a lot of cash on hand. Like No Labs has plenty of cash. They can keep doing their R&D for years, whether they have something to bring to market or not, even though they're going to bring something to market. So it's silly. Like they just don't know what else to do. It's like they got stamped at Harvard Business School like short sell, bronk, short sell, bronk, and they just churn them out. And they end up at these hedge funds and they go, oh, I'm going to short sell. And they just do that until they get their bonuses and walk away. Start all over again. Well, what's the damn jar on top shelf behind me? Okay, here we go. This right here. So this is a jar of blue clay from my first diamond claim in Colorado. So this is the weird diamond. It's really hard to see, but you can see it's kind of mica rich. There's like some shiny things in there. So I just had a jar that had been my buddy Dave's homemade salsa, and we ate it all, and I filled it up with this. I haven't opened it at all. I bet it smells like cow shit, because literally it's a pond that a bunch of cows have been pooping in for like 150 years. We had to dig through to get the diamonds. But I always thought it was pretty cool. In the daylight, can't really see. In the daylight, it kind of glows more of a blue color than this kind of poo green. But this is what that is. There's lots of rocks in various parts of the house. If I can do right above my finger. Those are from Luc Yen, Vietnam. There's a big discovery of spinels inside some marble, and I've got a friend who I've made on the internet that he found a bunch of these spinels in his farm field, and for fun he breaks up the marble, and then he carves little flowers with the spinel gems as like the petals and the flowers. So he makes those. And I don't know if there's other cool rocks that you can see right now. on the top shelf above the jar, if I move my hand right, I can't, right there, there's a bunch of rocks up on the top of that shelf, and those are, what I got up there? I've got some lamperite from Wyoming. I have a really cool stone from Namibia. I'll just bring it over here because it's cool. This might be one of the most valuable rocks I have. This is a raw ore that has color change alexandrite in it from Namibia. And it's kind of a red-green alexandrite. And there's probably a couple hundred carats of it inside this rock. But I haven't done anything else with it because it's just so groovy. I just keep it there. But, you know, alexandrite is a very, very fine stone. First found in the Ural Mountains in Russia. Named after Prince Alexander. Okay. Back to the feed here. Okay. So a jar of dirt. Yes. It's a jar of dirt. Real diamond hands about to crawl out of that thing. Am I still long on Puttanesca? Every damn day of my life. Good old horse sauce. YouTube, don't ban me, please, for saying that. Prison hooch. Okay. Obligatory shirt story. Well, this is my annual 4th of July fireworks shirt. I actually bought this in high school. I thought it was a groovy shirt. I was at Valley Village one day, and I said, I'm going to own that. Now it gets worn once a year around the 4th of July. Like a couple other 4th of July shirts with like American flags and hot rods and things like that. They also get worn because they're dorky as heck. Okay, stick to the stocks. I will answer the... Oh, I'll talk about whatever I want, Pete. Okay. Okay. Rocks with Houston. Stocks and rocks. Drink the wrong jar. That would be... Oh. What are my thoughts on... This is from Nil211981. What are thoughts on Emrin? I don't know enough about Emrin. I think somebody mentioned them the other day, and I wrote it down, and I promised to look it up, and then I didn't. And I'm a jerk. Let's see here. I was going to look deeper into it, and I totally... This week has been so weird. Marin Software. Huh? They had a lot trading. That's pretty interesting. And it looks like they... Wow. Alright. They've gone bonkers as of late. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to look them up. See what's... I don't know. Sorry. I don't know enough about Marin Software. But it looks like they have gone absolutely nuts in the last month. So, if you had Marin Software a month ago, and you have them now, you are a filthy rich son of a gun. Am I wearing the long socks? I'm wearing the long Costco socks. Because that's where men like me get their socks. Okay. Junkum. Who's Gary Gensler? Oh. Gary Gensler's the head of the SEC. And we've been holding him up as this guy who's going to fix all that's wrong with the world. And he seems to be meeting the same fate as everyone else who we think is going to fix all the problems in the world. In that they go, I'm going to fix all the problems of the world. And nothing happens. Miss King Felix. I miss King Felix too. I wish Felix well. He doesn't have any fastball anymore, and that's kind of what he needed. And every year with the Mariners, like, I'm in the best shape of my life. And then his fastball would be 5 miles an hour slower than it was the year before. So Christopher Sawchuk, Sears penny stock was restricted on Fidelity today. Interesting. Sears Holdings is really interesting because, you know, they're in this bankruptcy, but they hold billions of dollars in assets. It appears to be more in assets than the debt they owe on their bankruptcy. So I'm really interested to see how that shakes out exactly because it's you should just be able to sell the rest of your assets, pay off your debt, and then whatever's left over should go to these shareholders. At least that's in my brain how it would work. Kieran Deep Bajaj. Yes, I talked about the preferred stocks, the preferred shares for Torchlight. That's now metamaterial. Those no one in the chat has mentioned that they've gotten their preferred shares yet. I haven't gotten them. I keep checking my Fidelity count, and there's de nada. There's nothing in there. So I'm wondering when we're going to get those into our accounts. We should have gotten them starting on Wednesday, and here we are at Friday. It shouldn't take that long for them to go, all right, everybody has this, bloop, they stick them in there. And my hypothesis is they don't know where to put them because there's so many synthetics out there that they have to kind of figure out who they can give them to, and then recall the shares for everyone that has those synthetics because they can't. They're promised those preferred shares. They can't get them. Oh, monkey found a fly. Did you get it, monkey? Did you get it? Where's that fly? Where's that fly? Kill it. That's over here. It's bothering me now. It's right there, monkey. Right there. It's right there. It's right there. It's up there. Get it. And she was found in the jungles of Hawaii at like 9-10 months old and was basically living off of flies. So they're like her comfort food. Little sky raisins. Okay. So nil 1981. No preferred shares on yours yet. Okay, so yeah, and you're in TD. So I'm still waiting. I will see if they show up at all. Okay. Well, see the doggo now. There's monkey butt. She's concentrating. There's a fly that needs to be eaten. The house must be cleansed of this filth. Okay. Dr. Tonk, Houston needs a show on Discovery. Yes. I've been trying. I came so close last year. So very close to having a show on Discovery. And then COVID hit. And, well, here we are. My producer had presented a couple of shows. And there's the main one, Get Your Rocks Off of Houston, where I just take everybody on adventures through the desert. And we go smash rocks and discover how the earth made them. And visit ghost towns around the world. And kind of talk about like where stuff comes from. And then we presented another show called Houston, We Have a Problem, which the producer is like, we just have Houston solve people's problems. We just, you got a water crisis? We'll just go fix your water. You got, I don't know. I think his mind, I was more A-team, that I was going to come in and like, oh, good job. Did you get it? No. That I was going to be like, Hannibal and Mr. T and, I don't know, fight off gangs. Not really quite sure. And then the one that kind of also got traction was doing a show kind of talking about the current realities of the space race that's going on between the three big American companies plus NASA, your Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Virgin Galactic, and then NASA. And you've got these international groups. You've got China, the India-Japan Consortium, the European Space Agency, the Russians, and now Israel is trying to get into it, and kind of talking about like where the race is, what they're getting to, what technology they're using, what their missions are going to be. I thought it was a pretty good idea. It's something we could travel the world, talk to the scientists, and get that going. But Discovery Channel. If you're watching Discovery Channel, I'm here. I'll talk science to all your viewers, or Netflix or Hulu, I don't give a shit. Anyone. All right. Will Sonic overtake Dexcom market share? I don't know. Just from DAX. As I've said in the past, like my brain has the ability to keep track of a few stocks, and like know fairly intimate detail as to what's happening with those. But I will have to do research on Sensonic and Dexcom. Put them on the list here. Sensonic and Dexcom. You get to watch me write because my hand keeps hitting the camera when I do that. So yes, will they take over their market share? I don't know. Stay tuned and we'll find out. Okay. Space Monkey. He is the rock god, not the stock god. Okay. Stonk Mom 67. So what happens with MMAT synthetics? Do we get refunded investment or are we shit out of luck? Those synthetics will have to be covered, not covered, closed if these preferred dividends go out and you don't get them. Your brokerage will have to basically be like, you're getting margin called, your time's up, buddy, because you failed in your fiduciary duty of providing a dividend been issued by a company to these stocks. And when you create synthetics, when you borrow shares, that's the one thing you must do is make sure that everyone gets their dividends. So that's where we are. Okay. Can't stop, won't stop, GameStop. I believe Sears is caught up in a death spiral scheme. Yeah, kinda. They really can't seem to get out. It is interesting though that the CEO of Sears hasn't sold anything. That he's still holding, and it went down to like 17 cents, and he's like, "No, I'm not selling." So he seems to be like Mr. Holder, man. He's got his diamond hands, and he's holding. That's kind of a sign, I guess I would say. I mean, if the CEO didn't get out when it was several dollars and he's still holding at 17 cents or 25 cents, whatever it is right now, then, that tells me there's something going on inside that he knows about, and that those assets are worth so much more than the bankruptcy is basically allowing us to see. Okay. Neil asking another question. Did I talk about the S3 withdrawal? I did not talk about S3 withdrawal. And Adam Aron swearing he's an ape on Twitter today. I saw that tweet just before I went live. So the S3 withdrawal, I was asked about this on, when did I do the last show? Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. And I didn't really know what it had to do with. And apparently there's a way for those who own certain kinds of debt in companies, they can treat that debt as if it's ownership in the company, sort of like a lien on a house, right? If you own a home, you've got a lien against you. If that lien goes on too long, the person who has the lien can own your house. Well, there's some sort of weird loophole that allows the holders of that debt to convert it into shares, sort of like temporary shares, and trade it as if it's stock in the company. And there was speculation that that debt had been used to short attack AMC. And Adam Aron came on and he was like, no, this is all old news, it's all passé, none of that's going on. And then he talked about his Centricus, am I saying that right? The SPAC that he has that's designed to acquire, a foreign company, make it a U.S. company. And it's partial ownership by Citadel. And he's basically saying he doesn't know who's invested in this company. He doesn't care. Their goal is to acquire this quantum encryption company and go from there. That's the basis of his tweets. But didn't on Tuesday we talk about Citadel and some of these short hedge funds investing heavily into quantum encryption computing software? I don't know. But whatever. I think Adam Aron is realizing he has to kind of take a bigger chunk, a bigger share of the ape community to, do his job. He's realizing that the apes own his company. We own 85% of AMC. he has to work for us. And I think he's like, oh shit, maybe I should pay more attention to that and do better. I would think the best thing he could do is never offer shares on the OTC to short hedge funds ever again. Those are my 2 cents. And just sell at the market price to retail investors like GameStop did. Freddy Fredburger, his mayonnaise is short of stock. Which Boar's Head? Hellman's? Best Foods? I don't know. Favorite side dish with goat curry from Just from Dax. Oh man, depends on the curry. I mean, I'm a big fan of just like rice and potatoes and curry because it always seems to absorb it so well. I do like going tropical. I am someone who believes pineapples should go like in a lot of things because pineapples are freaking delicious. I also like to have kind of like naan or pita bread or something that's like really dippy for sauces. Yeah, those are. I'll think about other. The thing is, I eat so much of the curry that I don't have room for anything else. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, nom, 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 nom. It's like, you want dessert? I'm like, no, I can't. So thinking about side dishes is, I don't know. I just think about the curry when I get it. Okay. Heather Lee, your dog. Hope your dog gets those raisins just as good as Monkey Butt does. She's first night I had Monkey Butt, so she's 10 months old. She's in a new house. She's never slept on a bed in her life. I put her on the bed. I take my glasses off. I do whatever. Get ready. Lay down. Close my eyes, and all of a sudden, like, oh man, there's a stupid mosquito in the room. I'm just like, you do that debate. Like, do I just put the cover over my heads and sleep like that for the rest of my life until the mosquito just disappears, or do I actually wake up and find my glasses and murder this thing? And as these thoughts are going through my head, Monkey Butt in the darkness leaps up and goes, and then curls back up into a ball and falls asleep. And I was like, oh my god, my hero. How far do you see crude oil peak this year? This is from Wanro. Man, I think it's interesting the way crude oil is peaking because I mean everyone's getting out and traveling right now, so we're essentially treating the pandemic as if it's over, not caring about it anymore, and we're visiting all the places we want to go. We're driving. Traffic as much as a nightmare now as ever was before the pandemic, but oil consumption in the United States is dropping. We've been traditionally the largest consumer of oil in the world. But it's also increasing exponentially in developing nations that don't quite have fuel standards yet, that don't have the same access to electrical grids as we do to take some of the stress off of the oil market. I think it's a good chance we see oil prices go up, especially now that fire in the Gulf of Mexico made the news today. That always causes oil prices to spike. It'll be interesting to see if and when the Biden administration deals with Venezuela and Iran. They are doing back channel talks with Iran about putting the 2015 agreement back in place. I can understand that the Iranians, who just elected a new president, that they are trepidatious about it because one administration gets this deal done, the next administration rips it up, the following administration wants to get the deal done, and it erodes faith in signing a contract like that if the people who are pushing for it can flip on a whim. All right, so that may take some time and assuaging of fears. Venezuela, on the other hand, I personally believe that the U.S. government needs to just admit that our oil companies will not work in Venezuela the way they did for the last 60 years. That Venezuela is lost to U.S. oil companies, and that it's Venezuela's oil. It's their land, it's their oil, it's their land, it's their resource, and they should be allowed to manage it however they want. Now, would we strong arm them for some sort of access to that oil? Probably. We might say, hey, Venezuela, we'll lift these embargoes and sanctions against you if you allow, Citgo or someone to bid on contracts in your country. Venezuela is hurting so much right now. They've lost millions of their population to basically refugees, flooding the borders of neighboring countries, trying to escape. Food insecurity's gotten really high, but they have the largest proven oil reserves in the world, and that's what this is all about. Like, it's not about socialism, it's not about capitalism, it's about these U.S. companies wanting those oil fields, and the U.S. government doing their bidding for them. That's what it's about. So, will the Biden administration be able to thread that needle? I don't know, but I hope they can, and I hope that can get Venezuela and those people resources again, because they need that hard currency to be able to buy goods, and they're not allowed to trade goods with anybody. Sanctions like this essentially just make people starve, and it doesn't really affect the people in power like we hope it would. Saddam Hussein got away with it for 20 years. And he maintained power just as much as he could. So a lot of times these sanctions don't quite have the effect that we hope they would, and end up being just as monstrous as anything else to the people themselves. So I think we'll see oil spike quite a bit as pipelines burst, sanctions continue, use goes up. I wouldn't doubt if we see gasoline this summer over $4 a gallon for regular in a lot of places. I mean, in California, when I was on my road trip a couple weeks ago, there are places in the Sierras that were almost $6 a gallon for gasoline. Although weirdly, you cross 20 miles the other way into Nevada, it's like $3 a gallon. So, that just might be local markets at play, but still, that's European prices. All you Europeans that are probably asleep right now. That's kind of, I think we'll see it go up. That's one row. So that's the short answer. Michael Leon. So you've got your wife is Jamaican, man. I need to date. There's no Jamaicans out here. I want Jamaican or Haitian goat curry every day of my life, and I don't want to live on the East Coast where they all are. Okay, Sam Park, what happens with the AMC and the threshold list from here? Well, if it gets to... Someone correct me if I'm wrong on this. It's allowed 13 days? 12 days. Something like that on the threshold list. And if it goes that far, they're supposed to automatically do margin calls on those that haven't delivered in that amount of time, I think. I was reading it the other day, and it was really hot, and I couldn't. When it gets hot, my brain does not retain information the way it normally would. So it's like your computer's getting too hot, and the mouse cursor won't move across the screen at another time. You try to load a page. My cabeza is kind of the same way. Okay. Oh shoot. Sorry, someone was asking about Gods of the Sun. Adam Stewart, did you read the Gods of the Sun series on Superstock? It does not paint Adam Aron in a very good light. I have not read it. I'm gonna have to go search for that. I talked a couple weeks ago, and it ended up going kind of viral on the Superstock page about how I view Adam Aron, and I think he may have decent intentions with AMC, trying to keep the company, get them into the black, make them a company for the future, doing things like that. The methods he's used is where I have issues. and that is he's thinking like a normal CEO running a Fortune 2000 company, and the steps he would take. But he's in a special circumstance that needs a different thought process, which is squeeze. We're in a squeeze. It's going to squeeze. Think about the squeeze. Do what you can for the squeeze, 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 squeeze. And some of that has to do with getting some of those fundamentals on track, paying off debt. I do think that these companies like AMC and GME selling shares on the market was a good way to pay off debt and make the shorts look like garbage, because the price is so high, the shorts weren't going to be the ones buying those shares. The way he went about it was like, hey, guy I went to college with and he's my friend we have barbecues with, you want some AMC shares? I got some for you. And then they shovel them off in the dark pools and the OTC through these weird little brokers, and they didn't come to the retail guys, and it took buying pressure off the retail market. And then his friends at I want to say Meineke, but that's not right at all. It starts with an M. The hedge fund. The brain farts are coming. They took those shares. They're $50 million in shares, $100 million in shares, and then an hour later, dumped them on the market and just flooded the market with those shares. That's not ape behavior. You need to think strategically about the short squeeze and not kill the buy pressure against your stock that drops the price 20% in a day because you sold 11 million shares in the dark pools, and you dumped a bunch of shares previously to a hedge fund that then said, "Oh yeah, we're going to be long on it," and then an hour later sold them all. So those are the expensive mistakes I think he's figuring out right now. That he can't quite think country club. He has to think more guerrilla warfare. And while Ryan Cohen is an irreverent fart joke machine, he does have that strategy in play. He is thinking about that at every moment, is how can I screw these guys over who shorted my company? And I think he's brought the team in to do specifically that, to be like, what evil carnage can we do today? And I think if things explode, it will probably be because of little pieces here and there that Ryan Cohen and company put into place. And that's my opinion. So I'll have to read the Gods of the Sun series and see exactly what that's all about. But those are my opinions on that. And some guy yelled at me on Twitter today about it and then blocked me and then said I was FUD about Aron. Well, we have to be honest. We can't just blindly be in a cult and not question things and say, hey, that shouldn't have happened. You shouldn't have done that. We should be able to recognize and criticize and critique, because that's the society we're in. I still have my AMC shares. I still think it's going to go boom, boom. But it would have gone boom, boom perhaps a week ago if they hadn't dumped all those shares on the market when they did. So there we go. I'll talk. That's my spiel on that. Okay. Can GME be converted to another company and do a 1-to-1 swap and force a squeeze? That's kind of, I think, what's happening with Torchlight and metamaterial, is that QSIP change supposedly forces shorts to close their positions. We haven't seen it yet, but they might take X amount number of days of FTDs for that to happen. I'm sure GME might be able to do something like that. Why they would want to convert to another company, I don't know, because right now they've got so much press and marketing as a result of this squeeze, because they are like, it's the GME squeeze. Everything else is second banana on the headliner. So I don't think GME would go with a merger and become another company simply because they get so much free marketing out of that. And they just hired away the branding guy from Amazon to do branding for GameStop. So I expect to see, you know, GameStop mouse pads, GameStop game controllers, GameStop, you know, brand VR glasses, GameStop RAM, GameStop motherboards, things like that starting to come out. Maybe even like GameStop NVIDIA graphics cards. I'm sure we'll see GameStop stamped on all sorts of things the way, you know, Amazon Basics are done, or Safeway Select, President's Choice from Fred Meyer, whatever these like brandings are done. So I think we're going to see GameStop that way. So I doubt that GameStop will merge in a way and do a one-to-one swap to force a squeeze. They could probably, but I don't think we'll see them give up that market recognition that they have right now. If AMC gives out 2 tickets of dividends at approximately $10 per share and potentially billions of synthetics, they'll make a lot of money and hurt shorts. That's actually a brilliant idea, William Morgan. So if AMC gave out 2 movie tickets as a dividend, right? So 2 tickets per share. They can just print that stuff, send it out, boom, done. The shorts have to give out AMC movie tickets as dividends to all the synthetics out there that they've generated. Now, if it's the 100 million shares that are owned by institutions, then that's 200 million movie tickets at $10 each. That's what, $2 billion? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that they have to go to a movie theater and buy 2 tickets to give those guys. That could cover all their debt, right? So, William Morgan, you're a genius. You're a genius. I think the idea is brilliant. Why not? That raises money for AMC, lets them burn their debt without selling more stuff onto the market. Brilliant idea. Aron, if you're watching, or someone cuts this up and throws it on Twitter, give movie tickets away as special dividends, and then the shorts will be forced to buy a whole bunch of movie tickets from your theaters to provide all the synthetic shares. So do that. All right. Excellent idea. I love it. I love it. Okay. You could force a squeeze with fertilizer and diesel fuel. That's how you make go boom boom. Okay. And there's Ha Prime calling Morgan a genius also. That's a brilliant idea, William. I like it. Tweet it out. I'll retweet it all day long. Stanley Oboleski, crazy heat wave in the Northwest. Yeah, it was pretty gnarly for us here. Now it's totally comfortable. It's like 80 degrees and perfect. How long that will last, I don't know. But when it starts getting the 90s, people here start going bibbledy, and then it goes to the hundreds. We're like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Then it's like 110, and then old people just start dropping dead everywhere. It was pretty bad in Seattle, pretty bad in Vancouver. Portland was where it was the worst. Portland they're way more humid being on the river, and they've found 100 bodies or something right now of people that died from heat exhaustion. So yeah, the heat waves here are just gnarly. There's no air conditioners. I was talking with Matt's Market the other day. We had a little phone call, and he's from Louisiana, and 99.8% of buildings in Louisiana have air conditioning, and it's no one here has air conditioning. There's like 40% of the buildings in Washington State have air conditioning because it never gets that hot, or it does like once every 10 years. But we're gonna have like our seasons are gonna move from like fall, winter, spring, summer, and it's gonna be summer, smoke, winter, and those will be our 3 seasons. All right, Max Greenwell. Hey man, what would happen first? The supervolcano erupting in Yellowstone, or sea water levels rise drastically? Sorry for the morbid question. How bad it would be if volcano erupted? Let me put it this way. If Yellowstone volcano erupts, you will have Well, if you are east of Yellowstone, you might have a day, maybe two, to get on a plane and fly to the southern hemisphere and then live the next 10 years there. If you wait a day or two, you'll be so socked in with ash that nothing will leave the ground. Cars will stop running. The power grid will shut off. It will be brutal. And then comes essentially the nuclear winter, where over the next course of the few weeks, the entire northern hemisphere gets coated in such thick ash that lasts for years, then blocks out the sun. That it just becomes a mini ice age, and everything just gets covered with ice after that. A supervolcano like Yellowstone erupting is just bonkers. So, 1980, St. Helens erupts with 1 cubic kilometer of ash. That was enough to coat, areas within that were downwind from the volcano in several feet of ash for hundreds of miles. The Zatoba volcano, I believe, in like 1819 in Indonesia, that erupted 20 cubic kilometers of ash, and that was called the year without a summer. And it erupted, and there was basically, it didn't go above 50 degrees Fahrenheit pretty much anywhere in the northern hemisphere. It snowed in summer in Boston that year. The sunsets were so brilliant that fire companies would keep running off into the forest every night thinking the forest was on fire. Only to discover it was just actually the sun setting because of the weird glows that came off of it. Now, the Yellowstone supervolcano, when that last erupted, it was between 1,000 and 2,000 cubic kilometers of ash. Now, if 20 cubic kilometers can make it so there's no summer for an entire year, imagine what 100 times that can do for the northern hemisphere if something like Yellowstone or Long Valley in California or I can't remember all my supervolcanoes went boom. That it would make the northern hemisphere uninhabitable for a decade. Now, the odds of Yellowstone going off, we got about, each year is probably 1 in 400,000 chance. So it's about 600,000 to 1 million years for Yellowstone to erupt, and we're at like the 600,000 range. So it's getting closer to that time when Yellowstone erupt. Now, the rise of sea levels going drastically, that actually has probably a better chance at this point in the next few years. The way the ice sheets in Antarctica and in Greenland, which are the two biggest ice sheets, operate is you've got miles, 1 to 2 miles, maybe more thick of ice. And that ice is generated from years and years and years, millions of years of snowfall just compacting into this crystal clear blue pressurized ice. Now, all that stuff wants to slide downhill. But what happens is the thicker the ice gets, the more it presses down on the Earth, and the Earth ends up getting squeezed and kind of like, how when you sit on your bed, you get a little depression. The same thing happens with the Earth under all that weight of the ice, is that the rock gets squished. And that creates sort of a basin which keeps the ice from flowing away. Alongside that, you have ice sheets out in the ocean where the glaciers slowly go out in the ocean and become these ice sheets. And those ice sheets float in the water, and that kind of creates a buoyancy that keeps the rest of the ice from flowing downhill. What they're seeing, like in West Antarctica with the ice sheets, is that the ocean temperatures rise, the air temperature rises, these ice sheets break away, leaving the ice that's on land to have a better ability to flow out into the water. And as the ice flows out in the water and the land warms up, the stuff on top gets lighter, is that the Earth is starting to do this as those ice sheets get thinner. And as the more they flex up, the faster that stuff will flow down into the water. Greenland alone has the ability to raise ocean levels like 23 feet. And the likelihood of it being catastrophic and fast is pretty high in Greenland. But weird things might happen. So let's say there's a catastrophic melt in Greenland, and it only takes a few months or a few years for the ice sheet to go hurlock out into the Atlantic Ocean. And all of a sudden we've got huge amounts of ice, fresh water, sitting in the Atlantic Ocean. And just like, dropping a big giant ball bearing into a glass of full water, that water will spill over, right? So all this ice, you're looking at 600,000 square miles of ice that's 1 to 2 miles thick, going out in the ocean is enough to raise, I think, like 1.4 billion square miles of water 1 foot. And we only have like 139 million square miles of water on Earth. So you can imagine a lot of feet of water levels going up, and it might be really quick when it happens. The other thing that will happen with that is it will essentially shut off the Gulf Stream. So you've got the Gulf of Mexico off of southern United States, between Texas and Florida. That water sits there and it gets really hot in the sunshine. It warms up a whole bunch, and at deep levels it causes upwelling to happen as the water gets pushed away out into the Atlantic. So more water comes up, it gets hot, and that Gulf Stream runs up the Atlantic coast and out to the Arctic Ocean off of Norway and the North Sea and Great Britain. And that's kind of the cycle. That hot water moves up the coast, so you can get really warm water lots of the year. You get hurricanes that can hit Ireland and England as a result of that, of going up the Gulf Stream. Well, all the ice coming off of Greenland gets into the North Atlantic, and all of a sudden, salt water, which is more dense than fresh water, the fresh water is on top of all that stuff. So the Gulf Stream is going underneath the fresh water that would be essentially dumped in the North Atlantic, and that could shut down the entire Gulf Stream and cause places like the UK, Ireland, Scandinavia to all of a sudden behave much more like their latitude and go into an incredible deep freeze almost instantly. So you can get kind of an ice age happening as a result of global warming locally for those regions in Europe if Greenland melts. So Max Greenwell, to wrap that up, I think it's more likely we would see Greenland disappear than we are to see if Yellowstone erupt. Either way, the Northern Hemisphere is kind of effed in the A, if you know what I mean. All right, good question. What's up with shipping container rates spike? That's swap real. I heard a brief thing on the radio this morning about that. I think it's because shipping container companies lost huge amounts of money in the last year. Big shipping companies. They lost tons of money from COVID. They lost billions of dollars from the Suez Canal getting jammed with the Ever Given. There are still containers all over the world that are in the wrong place because a lot of these ships were forced to sit in harbors for months at a time. They weren't allowed into port due to COVID restrictions. And right now, I think these shipping companies need money. Oil prices are up. They need money, or else they're going to go bankrupt, and they're drowning in debt right now. So I think that's why we're seeing shipping rates go bonkers, is that this is their only mechanism for survival. So if you need to ship anything, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do so. And if more of these companies go bankrupt, then there are less shipping companies available to ship, and they can start charging pretty much whatever they want because it becomes, a supply and demand issue there. So Fabian, that would be why I think. Oh, sorry, it was Fabian. It's Swap Real. I think that's why we're seeing shipping prices go up. Okay. Threading the Needle sounds like a metal album. Yeah. My name's Buzzsaw, and this is Threading the Needle. Okay. Oh. My thing just reset again. Yes, 23 feet is a lot. So Greenland has the ability to make water levels or oceans all over the world go up 23 feet. West Antarctica alone has the ability to make ocean levels rise like 230 feet. So, I mean, if you want waterfront property, buy something on a hill. That's my advice. Okay. I decided to short my bank account. Like Italy or Spain, something got smacked with ice. Very possible. There's also a gigantic supervolcano in Italy where Naples is, in Mount Vesuvius. That entire region is just one giant caldera for a supervolcano, and it's the most densely populated area where a supervolcano is. There's like 1.5 million people essentially living in the caldera of the volcano. So I think you can imagine that we get some rumbling, and the magma chamber inflates, and people in Italy go, it's Mount Vesuvius, it's going to erupt. And some geologists say, actually, we think it's more than just Vesuvius this time. I think it's going to be the entire supervolcano. And a bunch of Italians going, eh. And, at some point it goes boom, and we get a bunch of unintended Italian astronauts flying through space as a result of the Naples supervolcano exploding. And that explosion would be huge, too, because of how much water intrusion there is from the Mediterranean there. It would be explosive. Because water is what makes volcanoes dangerous, because you get the steam explosions from those. That's why Krakatoa is so gnarly. Was 1836. Anyway, the sound of Krakatoa went around the earth like 4 times. So you can imagine, it's 1836. You're, I don't know, out there tilling a field for potatoes in Ohio. Middle of nowhere, you hear boom. You're like, what the hell was that? And like 14 hours later, you're boom again. Like, what the hell was that? Because the sound just kept going around the earth. Those ocean water intrusion explosive volcanoes are just amazing. Okay. Gonna buy a planet after moon. Floods and fires. That's what we got. Okay, MIT lecture worth your time. There was something about MIT up there, so recommending lectures. MIT and Stanford have some pretty cool lectures that are free. They're all online. And you can essentially do like a bachelor's degree through them that isn't a bachelor's degree. You can like take all the classes and be like, I took the classes, but you didn't pay them any money, so you'll get your diploma. But they offer all that stuff for free. Okay. Where do you think is an ideal spot when sea level rises? That's from Capzilla. There was a study that came out a couple years ago that showed, like, as far as major cities in North America, like Detroit, Michigan was the greatest place to be when climate change happens, because their climate will be moderated. The winters won't be as bad. They still have access to ports, being on the Great Lakes and through the St. Lawrence River, that they might actually see an improvement to their life as a result of climate change in Michigan. So maybe we'll see boom times in Detroit again. Be like the 1950s all over again. But I think sea level rise. Let me put into perspective sea level rise. So we saw the tsunami in 2004 in Indonesia. We saw the tsunami in Fukushima as a result of the earthquake in Japan in 2011. We saw what happened as a result of that wave smashing into the nuclear power plant there and essentially making a 200 square mile area around the nuclear power plant a forever dead zone. Like, no one will ever live there, possibly again, as long as humans roam the earth, and we know that that's there. Something like 70% of all the nuclear power plants are within 40 feet of sea level. On top of that, all of our ports, 2/3 of the human population is essentially at or around sea level. Most of the solid waste treatment facilities, most of the oil refineries, most of the chemical plants, they all need to be fairly close to ports so that they're useful. If we see sea level go to a catastrophic rise of 20 to 40 feet as a result of West Antarctica or Greenland melting into the ocean, where's everyone going to go? The ocean will be so polluted and so toxic, especially near shore, that it's going to kill off fish stocks. It's going to make huge dead zones for everything else as a result of all these weird nitrates and oils and then poo and all other stuff that will be flooded the ocean, nuclear material, etc. That we haven't really considered the impact of every single solitary piece of shore on Earth all of a sudden having a Fukushima. We can understand it in one zone, like, oh, tsunami hit there, that's terrible. But you can imagine that tsunami hitting and then never going away, right? Like, in 24 hours, if a big enough chunk of ice floats into the ocean and we see a 10-foot rise in sea level and it just never goes away, that is, our brains, I don't think, can comprehend the level of tragedy that would be the result of that. It's going to be gnarly. It's going to be absolutely gnarly when that happens. Just from Dax. Thoughts on big banks, Bank of America, Goldman City, accused of credit default swap antitrust schemes today? Oh man, I have not seen that. Are they being accused of essentially cornering the credit default swap market or something and kind of monopolizing it? I did not see that news today. That is going to go on the list. Interesting. Oh, sorry, my hand's going to hit that cable again. Credit default antitrust. Okay, it's on the list. I see it. That's my weekend homework. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Just from Dax. That could possibly affect, because those credit default swaps are generally bets that something's going to fail miserably, and if they're cornering that market, then they are definitely seeing something on the horizon. Whether that will affect MOAS, I'm not sure. It might affect a credit crunch. Hey, buddy, no bones, no bones. Come on, come on. Sorry, the dog wants to chew on a bone, and that's just, I know, I'm the most boring person in the entire world. You want a blanket? It's hot as hell in here, but okay. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it will affect MOAS necessarily, but might affect some sort of credit crunch if it's in tandem with the bond market right now, as the reverse repos are just at $1 trillion and absolutely insane. Okay. Link in the Bloomberg article on Reddit. Thank you. Musk's Neuralink says it'll be possible with their tech to bring back dinosaurs in about 10 years. Why not? If we're going to bring about the end of the world, we might as well have a new conqueror rule it, right? So Ethan Green, so you say New Mexico State Investment Fund filed a lawsuit yesterday against all the big banks. Interesting. That must be what Just From Dex was talking about. I'll have to check that out. Okay. Bloomberg News. Thank you. Blair Barkley, you're 545 feet above sea level. I think you're just perfectly above sea level right now. Okay. They're manipulating credit default swipe settlement prices in private auctions run and controlled by the banks. Oh. So I wonder if a result of this lawsuit might give us retail traders more access to those credit default swaps, because I think that's a financial instrument that you and I should have access to, just like we have access to options and other things. So, yeah, let's sue them all. Dr. M, Houston, is seafood still safe to eat after Fukushima? I saw that contaminated the entire Pacific Bowl about 5 years ago and probably spread to the Gulf. Well, the thing about pollution is the solution to pollution is dilution. So that nuclear material has dissipated so much in the last 10 years since that earthquake. I'm not worried about seafood stocks being too irradiated. I'm more worried about plastic being in my seafood than I am about radiation at this point. So the plastics in seafood is just bonkers. I mean, there's microplastics in my muscle tissue as a result of it being in the tissue of delicious fish that I eat. So not too worried about that at the moment. If the great flooding happens and sea levels rise, we probably won't be able to eat fish ever again. That might be the result of that. Robinhood is trying an IPO before they go bankrupt due to the B squeeze. Maybe that's they paid a $70 million fine the other day for essentially manipulating price action for stuff. So Robinhood right now, Vlad's cell phone got seized by regulators, by the SEC. That's not a good sign. uh, so be interesting to see what happens with Robinhood in the near future if their IPO gets off the ground before they face more fines. You don't want the headline to be $70 million in fines being paid because your service sucks as you're trying to sell to investors out there. But there's enough. They still seem to have enough users spending a lot of money. I still have a Robinhood account because it's easier for me to trade options with them than it is through other brokerages, and that's what I use it for. So I'm guilty of being a customer of theirs still. I'm still waiting. I had a survey sent to me from Fidelity asking me about their app, and I was just like, it sucks. Your app blows goats. It's terrible. I hate using it. You're annoying. Fix it. So hopefully they listen to me. I bet that some person in the marketing team is gonna be like, ugh. But really, Fidelity's app is terrible, and they need to streamline it and just pay enough money to steal the person who wrote Robinhood's app and just get that guy to make their app kick butt. Because I love having Fidelity and Schwab and these other like old fuddy-duddy brokerages because they've got access. I can trade foreign stocks. I can trade stuff on the OTC and penny stocks and pink sheets and all sorts of different stuff. But man, it is the most convoluted pain in the ass. It takes me open up the app, a bunch of garbage shows up. I hit login, and then it asks me to do my login stuff. So I do my login stuff, and then it pops up again with the exact same crap that doesn't have anything to do with me. So I have to go to accounts, and I click on accounts, and it shows me the various accounts I have, and I gotta click on the right account I want, and then it shows me like how much that account is worth, but I got to click on another thing to figure out what the hell I own. So I'm going like 5, 6, 7 clicks just to see what I own, when with as awful as Robinhood is, the moment I log in, it shows me everything I own and what it's done that day. It's not that hard to figure out, Fidelity. Just do that. Okay. Mary Chang, Mr. Wade, question: is extracting gold and silver from scrap economically viable, or is it more like a hobby? It depends. I can, if I spend enough time, on eBay, on other auction websites, going to garage sales. I collect the stuff over time. I might find at a rummage sale like an old, 1900s ladies' gold watch that's, gold fill or gold plated, and other little pieces of jewelry and some old electronics. I collect them in boxes, and then I spend like a few days ripping apart the old watches and getting all the pieces off of stuff and grinding computer chips in my rock grinder. And I get it all done, and my investment in this material might be, a couple $1,000. So spend a couple $1,000, get pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of this scrap metal and electronics, and then I spend a day or two grinding it all up. And it might take a week or so for me to melt it all on the acids, dissolve it all in the acids, and then reconstitute it and burn it in my kiln and get it out. But in the end, I might have like $20,000-$30,000 in gold for a couple weeks of work. So, you can get lucky that way. The silver, I basically just maintain until I have like a giant drum full of old nitric acid, diluted nitric acid that's full of suspended silver in there. And then I dump in my salts and I get the silver out, and all of a sudden I'll have enough to make it viable. If you're doing small batches, it's not very viable at all. It's to kind of like work at scale over time. If you're buying gold at too high a price, scrap gold, like a lot of people on eBay will be like, hey, this is 14 karat gold. It's a broken piece of crap. I'm going to sell it at, $2,000 an ounce. Like, well, no, don't buy that. You want to buy stuff from like Goodwill that they don't realize what they have. So you have to let's pay attention to that and figure out how to make it worth your while. If you can get bulk material, like if you can buy scrap from, Thailand or India, that's, a metric ton of old 46 computer chips, you can make a lot of money doing that. It only takes 18 computer chips to make like an ounce of gold if you have a 486 computer. So there's a lot of money to be made in those older computer chips, but that supply is dwindling. So yeah, it's possible to make money off of it. You just have to do it really smartly, and it's slow going if you don't have like an industrial operation. Ebe Stevens, have you opened the beta version of Fidelity app? No, I have not. Is it good? Is it LB Stevens? Sorry, I might say things wrong. I can't tell if it's an I or an L. It's sleek. Okay, maybe I'll open the beta version. All right, cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. I will look for it next time I open my app on my phone. Okay. Drew J, yeah, it takes forever to log into Fidelity and figure out what the hell is going on. The blanket ran away. She heard some. I think she heard someone at the door and was like, "Brr, brr." Stephen Lantham, do we get hosed with Torchlight? I don't think so. You're probably a little late coming to the program. I think we're still in the Torchlight metamaterial squeeze. Basically, we're waiting for everything to shake out after the merger and for people to finally get their preferred dividends. And once those preferred dividends are delivered or not delivered, do lots of synthetic shares, then we should see mandatory margin calls happen for all those synthetics that did not get their dividend shares. Okay. Game credits, original and game currency, focused on esports. Oh, that's a good idea. Ethan Algreen. Yeah, doing game credits. Wonder if GameStop can do some sort of deal with a game company so that game credits could be used at a store or through dividends or whatever, and just kind of, we'll give you a dividend of, I don't know, what those old My Life dollars that had that weird market we could like buy Bitcoin with? Was it My Life? A Sims? One of those. Do something like that. In-game XP for your Call of Duty, giving us dividends. This is from Nil. I hear that Neil Sharkey is warning of potential bank failures, but this time they won't get bailed outs. They will get bail-ins and use depositor money, which was approved in Dodd-Frank. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, we invented this term after the '08 financial crisis called too big to fail, meaning if one of these gigantic institutions failed, they were responsible for so much liquidity flowing through the market that we couldn't, our economy could not exist without this institution continuing what they're doing. So we had to bail them out. One issue with that too big to fail to me says, why isn't that an antitrust issue? Why didn't we force that bank that's too big to fail to break up into dozens or hundreds of smaller banks so that we don't have to worry about if, First Bank of Wichita fails? It's cool, they only had 80 branches, not a big deal, versus a Chase Manhattan failing that has $3 trillion in assets or something. I'm not sure the specifics of how the bail-in works with Dodd-Frank, but my Houston brain says make sure you don't have banks that are too big to fail. That's break it up, you two. Okay. Financial institutions fail stress test. Bloomberg News. Oh man, all sorts of stuff is being dumped on this Friday, isn't it? That's wild. Blair Barkley, do you belong to Mensa? Not anymore. I did when I was in high school. I joined, and then I was like, wait a minute, these guys just want $20 out of me so I can sit and do stupid puzzles with other nerds. I think at this point, Mensa is a brilliant business plan. You just make someone take a test. You tell them, oh, you're really smart, and then they pay you for you to tell them you're really smart. It's kind of like if all of you go like type into Google IQ test right now, every single one of you is going to get a genius level IQ result, 135 points or higher, every last one of you. Why? Because we all want to be told that we're super brilliant and smart. And like, yeah, I do have an IQ of 140. And you get these weird like incels on Twitter that like put their IQ scores up on their handle, and I don't know. But no, I'm no longer a Mensa member. It first of all was not very much fun, the meetings, and second of all, um, if I want to do a Mensa puzzle, I can just Google Mensa puzzle and do it for free. They didn't figure that one out. Okay. What's my floor for selling on metamaterials? This is from Tyrone Chuang. I know. I'm waiting to see. I'm just waiting to see if there's a squeeze on metamaterials. I had originally bought Torchlight as a long play because I knew a dividend was coming. I didn't know how much the dividend was going to be, so I bought a couple hundred shares, thinking if the dividend was a couple bucks, then I doubled my money from that alone. So the fact that it became the squeeze play just kind of, it never occurred to me when I bought the shares. I liked the metamaterials, that my stock was going to become metamaterials as a result of buying that Torchlight stock, because I thought they've got some cool tech and they have a lot of cool scientists that they've got backing by the Canadian government. They've got a bunch of cash. They've got some cool products coming out. So why not bet on the future that way? If it squeezes, I will probably sell, because why not make that money and then wait for after the squeeze to pick it up again? But I'm not sure where it will squeeze. I don't know. I don't know the share count right now, because they sold a bunch of shares of Torchlight after the dividend date, like the date you had to have the shares. So they sold like $250 million in shares between when they issued a dividend and when you had to have the shares to get that dividend. So those aren't dividend play shares, because it raised a bunch of money for the new metamaterial merger company that was on NASDAQ. And then all the Torchlight shares went from 2 shares to 1 metamaterial, and all the metamaterial shares went from 1 metamaterial to 3 metamaterial shares. And now it's like, now they're one company. And I don't know how many shares that is. That's Sears, 100 million. So it might be 400 million shares right now, somewhere around there. Every single day I log in, it shows something different, because I think they're still trying to like rectify that. But I have the feeling that they got shorted to a tune of possibly millions and millions and millions more than that. Maybe even billion shares. Who knows? More shares of Torchlight were sold that can't be accounted for and must be bought through metamaterials. So when that happens, I guess we're gonna see. We're gonna see how it squeezes, and I guess I'll have to just pay attention to the volume. And if I think the volume all of a sudden is at 500,000 or 500 million, maybe it's time to jettison those shares and then buy them back after the price drops. But I don't know what floor. My brain can't even think of a floor for that right now, because I'm still processing the fact that it might squeeze. Okay. Local rule order. Too big to fail was talked about in academia before 2008. Oh, okay. I wasn't in the financial academia in 2008. It was just talked about a whole bunch as these banks were being bailed out. Like Wachovia, one of the biggest banks in the country, was big enough to fail, so Wells Fargo was allowed to absorb them. Washington Mutual, the largest savings and loan in human history, wasn't too big to fail, but Chase Manhattan was allowed to buy Washington Mutual's assets for like 1 cent on the dollar. You know, Goldman Sachs should have gone under 100 times during the financial crisis, but we just dumped a bunch of money into their program, and we allowed the big banks to gobble up 2 of the 5 investment banks that exist in the United States. So I think too big to fail might depend on whose palm you're greasing at the time. Brian Collins, you're in Phoenix, and there's a water. Is there a water crisis right now? All the reservoirs in the West are bone dry, except for here in the Seattle area. We had a lot of snow this year. Okay. Jethro Bow, quick question on the 10-day period to announce a dividend. Is this a thing? I think generally they have to announce that stuff ahead of time. Kind of like rules for insider trades, that if you are an insider and you're going to sell shares, you have to announce like 30 days ahead of time that you plan on announcing you're going to sell shares. And I think buying shares, like, hey, I'm going to buy more shares, you have to make that announcement as well. So a dividend, insiders know about a dividend ahead of the public, so they have to give the public a chance to have access to the stock if there's going to be a dividend. Like, oh, hey, we're going to be giving a dividend on this date in the future. They have to announce that ahead of time before. They can't be like, ha, surprise, suckers, we're doing a dividend at 2 p.m. today. Suck it. They won't let them do that. They have to announce that ahead of time. So I'm not sure the exact rule on that and what the time period is, but 10 days sounds reasonable to me to announce a dividend. Okay. Just from Dax, ever went mining for Bertrandite? No, I have not. I never looked for that. There's a few cool minerals I haven't had a chance to really scope out in the West. I want to do benitoite really bad in California, but most of those I think are on private land. The few places, that's one of the rarest gemstones in the world. They fluoresce really cool in ultraviolet light. The beautiful bluestone that's found in the Sierra Nevadas in California, Benito County. There's also spinels apparently in Fresno. I'm gonna go looking for in Fresno County. I've been to Sierra Nevadas a bunch, but I haven't had too much of an opportunity to mine in the Sierra Nevadas to go prospecting. But Bertrandite, no, I've not looked for that yet. Do you know of good spots I should go? If so, tell me. Grace Foundation, how did you learn to use satellite imagery to recognize gem and precious metal deposits? Well, okay, so the easiest thing to see with a satellite for deposits is going to be diamond-bearing kimberlite, or at least kimberlite in general, about 50-50 when it comes to whether it's diamond-bearing. Half of them have diamonds, half of them don't. And to do that, you look at the satellite photos. You can look in the Basin Range in Wyoming and Montana and Colorado, and you can look in these like dry kind of desertified fields, and you'll see these little clumps of what look like dry lakes, and they're not very big, maybe an acre or two in size, fairly round, maybe sometimes kind of oval in shape, and they're in these groups, and those are kimberlite pipes that have come from deep in the mantle, and they came up at some point, and the earth was several kilometers thicker in that spot than it is now. And it froze in place, that lava all cooled into this tube, and the rock got uplifted, the earth got worn down over millions or billions of years, and all of a sudden the top of that lava tube, the lava pipe, is exposed. And the material in that pipe is way looser, way easier to erode than the surrounding granites. And so they make these little depressions, and it's really soft, really rich volcanic soil, and then the lava pipe is below that, and it's surrounded by all this granite. So oftentimes ponds will form. You'll get lots of wildflowers and other plants that love like delicious volcanic soil. And so you can look on these satellites and see what looks kind of like little salt lake flats, these tiny little ones all over Wyoming, all over Colorado, all over Montana. It's very likely those are kimberlite pipes, and so you can test them with like hydrochloric or sulfuric acid. If the ground sizzles there, it's a good chance that you've got an alkali type soil that is one of those pipes. And then in the mountain ranges, nearby mountain ranges where the rock has been uplifted, you've got trees, because you get the orographic lift of the clouds rising up and dumping more rainfall than in those desertified basins. So you have lots of trees in those areas, but then you'll find a whole bunch of maybe little ponds or beautiful meadows that are kind of the same shape as the ones in the desert. And those fields, the soil's so soft that if any tree tries to grow, a wind will just blow it right over. There's nothing really for them to get their purchase in. But again, like lots of flowers and grasses will grow on those things. And you can do the same thing. You just dump your acids in there and test it. And then it comes down to like actually digging for the stones themselves, which is a much bigger process I could talk about at a later date. But looking for metal deposits from the earth, uh, like if you're looking for gold, you want to find quartz veins. So you can look in mountain ranges and look for big giant quartz veins, and then take maps of known gold claims and whatnot, kind of overlay them and see if anyone got gold at that spot. So I'm running low on water and my throat's getting dry. Technician, whatever happened with HIG on 618? Man, nothing happened. It went down like 10 cents, and that's about it. If you look though, you'll see that these banks are still dumping money into puts and calls with HYG each week. One of the people I know on Twitter is just doing every week, putting like $100 into puts with HYG, and if the stock market takes a dump, HYG will take a dump with it, so your puts will make money. And it's kind of like a weekly lotto that they're doing. They're $100 here, next week $100 there, next week $100 there, because eventually he's expecting it to drop 20 or 30%, and when it does, he's rich. So that's kind of what they're doing with that. And the hedge funds seem to be doing weekly spreads on plays like HYG, because if nothing happens, it's a wash. They don't necessarily lose everything, but if something happens, they can win either way. And that seems to be what happening. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are. But thank you, technician. Sorry, technician. I went to public school. I can't read. Okay. Looking forward to checking out strewn fields for meteorites when it cools down here in Arizona. It's Brian Collins. Yeah, there's lots of cool places to look for. There's actually like Meteorite Valley where you can go metal detecting and find a bunch of meteorites out there. Tiny little guys from a big impact that exploded all over the place. Dry lake beds are an awesome place to find meteorites. If you are ever in LA and you have a chance to go to, oh my gosh, my brain's blinking in names. The little observatory up on the hill by Hollywood Hill. Not Mount Wilson. The observatory. Duh. My brain's not working. Go inside the observatory there, and they have a little space museum. They have a whole bunch of awesome meteorites, and most of them are found by like this 13-year-old kid who just kept going to dry lake beds and finding them. The thing about meteorites is they come from outer space. So if you're in a dry lake bed that's all like layers of mud and sand over long periods of time, over thousands, millions of years, if there's a rock on top of that mud and sand, it didn't come from beneath. It might have come from upstairs. So there's a good chance when you find one of these rocks in certain dry lake beds that it's a meteorite. It's why they do these big expeditions every year to Antarctica, the South Pole, to look for meteorites, because you've got 2 million years worth of snowfall and then there's a rock on top of it. Well, where else could that rock have come from if not space? So when you find rocks sitting on top of big snowfields like that, you got yourself a meteorite. So I am, if and when this stuff moons, I will be going to Antarctica to find myself my own meteorites there, because why not? And I don't know, push a penguin over or something. Okay. I might only last a couple more minutes here. I'm out of water and I'm starting to get really warm in the office here. Griffith Park, thank you. Oh my God, why couldn't I think of Griffith Park? Griffith Park Observatory. My friend JB Waterman might still be doing shows there. If you see JB, say hi. Say Houston says hello. He used to do like the star tours in their planetarium. So yeah, JB's. I'm 6'4". JB towers over me. He's a very tall, handsome individual. Okay. Dr. M, I believe the Fukushima molten core has been spewing out into the Pacific Ocean since the incident. The power plant was literally oceanfront. Check out Helen Caldecott videos. Pediatric oncologist. I'll have to check that out. I know they were having problems. The molten core was so hot that they couldn't even get the robots in there to drop the fuel rods into a water supply. The robots would get in there and just the neutron bursts would just tear the machinery apart, and the robots would essentially just become part of the molten core at that point. And Yeah. Brandon M, are meteorites valuable? Yes, very valuable. Um, Larger ones, of course, are more valuable than smaller ones. But if you have a meteorite that was an eyewitness meteorite, that thing is worth a lot of money. And if it has a story behind it, like the two biggest meteorite sales I know for like decent sized, like, grapefruit sized ones, there's a meteorite that killed a dog. I want to say in like the Czech Republic, like just smited this dog out of nowhere. That thing's worth a fortune. There's also was a giant legal battle over a grapefruit-sized meteorite that, like 1950s, it burst through the roof of this house in Alabama, bounced off the floor and hit the husband in the leg. And this family, these like children, have been fighting over this meteorite because it's worth like $5 million. So those meteorites could be worth a lot of money. There was one that there's a little town called Tracyton, which is not too far from where I am, and a bunch of people watched a meteorite go splork right into the water out there. And I don't know if any commercial divers have gone to find that thing yet, but my guess is it's probably bigger than a grapefruit due to the splash it made, and it'd be worth a fortune. If anyone goes out to Tracyton, Washington, goes scuba diving and finds that meteorite, you just made yourself a lot of money. Okay. George Agbasit, I think I said that right. George Agbasit. I used to live in Moses Lake. What do you think of the Scablands? Oh man, the Scablands are awesome. For those who don't know, Eastern Washington is a basalt floodplain. So before the Yellowstone volcano became the Yellowstone volcano, there's basically this hot spot, and lava comes up year after year, over and over and over again. And North America started moving over this hot spot. And this hot spot was probably in the ocean, and it probably made mountain ranges like what the coastal range now that kind of scraped off the Pacific. And this thing is pumping out lava all year round through the easy to melt oceanic rock. And North America comes moving over because of spreading ridge. You got the spreading ridge happening in the Atlantic that's pushing North America away from Europe and South America away from Africa. So this thing's moving at 3 inches a year or whatever, and it starts moving over this hotspot volcano. And when it did so, it created these gigantic flood basalts that just covered hundreds of thousands of square miles in what is eastern Washington and eastern Oregon. And now we call them the Columbia River flood basalts because the Columbia River kind of bifurcates that whole system. So this stuff is 2, 3, 4,000 feet thick. It's like enough magma to cover the entire earth in like 10 feet of lava that's in this one spot. And as that North America moved in a hot spot, you get this big giant valley, like where Craters of the Moon is in Idaho. That is essentially what's slowly becoming the hotspot volcano under Yellowstone. And at the time, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon were essentially at sea level, and it was really easy for that magma to get through the oceanic rock and start spreading everywhere. But as they got further and further inland, the continent gets thicker and thicker and thicker the further east you go. And all of a sudden, the continent might be 100 miles thick, where Wyoming is. Like, Wyoming is just this giant, thick craton of rocky material, of continental material. And it's really hard for the magma to make it through all of that. And the lower melting temperature of the granites that make up that rock makes the lava like really tacky. Like I call it herky-jerky lava because it's really hard for it to move up through the material. And you get a bunch of groundwater intrusion happening. So for thousands of years, the groundwater keeps sinking near this magma chamber. And so rather than getting frequent explosions of basalt that kind of flood everything, you get giant explosions of ash and steam and all that stuff. So anyway, I got too far from the Scabland. So anyway, so you got this big section of basalt in eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. When the glaciations happened, all these glaciations over the past couple million years, every 15,000 to 20,000 years, glaciers come down out of Canada. There was a point where the glaciers blocked off a river in Missoula, Montana. So all the water kept trying to flow down this canyon and got blocked by a glacier. So the water level started rising to the point where it was several thousand feet thick. Well, there was periods where either it got warm enough or enough pressure of the water behind that little finger of the glacier caused the glacier to break. And we're talking insane amounts of water, enough water to probably cover the United States easily in this glacial lake, flooding all out at once across Idaho, across Washington, and across Oregon. And this is a wall of water that's a mile thick, traveling 50 to 200 miles an hour across the land. And it's so gnarly that there's these things called coulees, which are like dry canyons that formed just from this event, and they're gigantic. There's a place called Dry Falls near Cooley, Washington. And we're talking probably at the time the largest waterfall ever in human history, or in Earth's history. A wall of water a mile thick, falling 1,000 feet off a cliff on its way out to the Pacific Ocean, carrying with it rocks from 500 miles away. There's rocks that are like in the Portland area that are the size of houses that came from Montana that just tumbled with this thing. And if you look at satellite photos like in the Palouse, you'll see what look like ripples like you would see if you went snorkeling at the beach in Hawaii or Florida, where the sand makes those little waves, except these ripples are like a mile in size because they were formed with the same action of flowing water, but everything else grew in scale with it. The scablands are absolutely cool. There's some really cool towns built on these like bluffs where the water had carved everything out. So you have this little town on a plateau out in the Palouse, followed by these like cool undulating fields of wheat that just go with the curves of those ripples that were made by the giant floods during all that. So the scablands are really bitchin'. If you have a chance to visit, do it. Great wine country if you're a wine drinker. Lots of wheat and barley comes from there as well. And if you look at it on Google Earth, just type in the Palouse on Google Earth and just look at the patterns that are made in eastern Washington as a result of those catastrophic floods. Okay. Okay, we get lots of geology questions tonight. It's all right. We're on the weekend. We're in geology question land. Chris Warner, geology question. I've found various types of lava rock that wash ashore from Long Island Sound. Is there unknown lava flow somewhere? Well, you're going to have lava flows all over the place. Just because they didn't happen recently doesn't mean they didn't happen. You can go to, New York City to Manhattan and go to Central Park, and you'll see exposed bedrock in places in Central Park. You might even get little quartz veins in there. That rock very oftentimes is a basalt. It's an oceanic volcanic rock. You've got your granites go a little further northeast, like into northern New York, upstate New York, into Vermont and New Hampshire. You'll have lots of granite up there, and that granite is volcanic rock. It's just volcanic rock that never made it out into the surface. So this big plume of granitic rock came up, hundreds of millions of years ago, and didn't quite make it any further and froze in place. And so a lot of stuff was able to crystallize out as it slowly cooled. So you get granite there that's similar to granite you might get in Yosemite. That was made pretty much the same way. And then whatever the host rock was eroded away and exposed the granite over millions of years. I haven't ventured too much since I was a kid along like Long Island Sound. It's been a long time trying to picture exactly all the rocks out there. But there's quite a bit of bedrock exposed. The glaciers made it that far, and that's why Rhode Island kind of looks the way it is with those like weird little fingers of all those little harbors. Those are the result of glaciations scouring that rock. So a lot of that bedrock, my guess, is basaltic in nature. Remember when there's a Pangea, all this material smashed together and made this giant mountain range. And that mountain range split apart when the Atlantic Ocean created a spreading ridge. And that spreading ridge is all basaltic lava. So it carried with it. And the mountain ranges now are like the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, the ranges in Scotland, and the Appalachians on the other side. Those are all the same mountain range. Those are like the Himalayas 250 million years ago. And now they're spread apart and eroded down and all these like glorified hills as far as I'm concerned. And those all had volcanic action in them way, way, way back when as well. And those rocks can tumble downstream and end up in Long Island Sound. So I'm not sure when the most recent active volcano was on the eastern seaboard, but it probably wasn't any time in the last 150 million years. Okay. Ooh, Bullish. Your students must have an awesome time learning with you. Thanks for the lesson. So way to be a millionaire. Happy Independence Day. Happy Independence Day. Woo! My last drop of water. My last drop of water. Yeah, this is so. When I taught at the Art Institute, the classes were 4 hours long once a week, and you can imagine what it's like to teach a 4 hour long algebra class to art students. There's not 4 hours of math in there. There's no way anyone can learn more than 45 minutes of math before their brain just shuts off. So I ended up learning I had to design the class around going off on tangents. And then I would sneak in the math in between all the stories they got told and the things they learned. So I spent a lot of time just like, hey, ask me anything. And when I'm done answering that, then I'll show you how a parabola works. And that's kind of how I roll when it comes to teaching these classes. So I love this chat style. This is awesome because people just ask questions. And if I have an answer, I can just go on and on and on about it. So thank you. I think... Well, every once in a while, I had a student, my old student Ian, popped up in some of these, and he can tell you that's how class rolls. You just get me talking about something, and we'll go off on all sorts of tangents we can do. This is from Thoughts and Prayers. Why do meteorites have those weird little straight pattern fractal things? Does that have to do with how the metals fuse in space? Well, that has to do with the type of meteorite. So if you have an iron nickel meteorite, they call them iron nickel because it's mostly iron and nickel. Those were the cores of planetoids at one time. So when you have a planetary system forming, you got this cloud of gas that's condensing from gravity, and as it condenses, it spins, just like a ballerina or an ice dancer, like pulling in their arms. As it contracts, it spins faster and faster. So the star at the middle is spinning. As a result, the gas cloud is also spinning, and inside that gas cloud is where you get the planets forming. And they form kind of at first just by random particles smacking into each other, might statically bond with each other, and you get a couple of them sticking here and there. And you get rocky materials like carbonaceous chondrites, and you get volatiles. You might get ices forming, and they all start smacking into each other. And when they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, the impacts get larger and larger and larger because the gravitational pull is stronger. And as that happens, you get this kind of molten ball of goo. And for hundreds of millions of years, the Earth itself was a molten ball of goo. And just like with any liquid, if you have, your salad dressing bottle, right? And you shake it up and you let it sit, that liquid, the vibration of all those molecules happening inside that liquid will allow all the things to settle out according to their density. So you get the heaviest stuff on the bottom and the lightest stuff at the top. Well, imagine you have, like, I got my Safeway Cola here. You've got, a big giant sphere made up of a whole bunch of bottles of salad dressing. That's your molten ball of goo that is your planetoid. And all the heavy stuff starts to sink towards the center, and all the light, fluffy stuff goes out towards the top. So on Earth, the further into the Earth you go, the denser the material gets. And as it gets denser, it gets a higher metal content. So like the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth is like 15 grams per cubic centimeter, while the soil where we live on the surface is like 3 to 4 grams per cubic centimeter. So it's a lot. It's 1/4, 1/5 as dense as the center of the Earth. So these planetoids, as they become molten balls of goo getting smacked by all these asteroids, they'll start to oh my God, words are totally escaping me. Differentiate. That's where we're going to differentiate between the densities of material, and you get this core of metals. Now, what happens is it may freeze in place and become like a baby planet for a while, and something big and evil comes along and just blows it apart. A catastrophic, absolutely world-ending event that just blows apart this entire planetoid. And so this core blorps back out into space, and those are the iron nickel meteorites you find there, the former cores of these protoplanets. And depending on if the core solidified or not, and there may have been crystallization that happened inside that core, and as crystallization happens, the metals were melting and they were melted and they started to freeze, and they freeze into their own crystal patterns. And so when you do a thin section, you cut that meteorite in half, you will see the crystal patterns, and oftentimes they're kind of like these weird right angles for a lot of them, and that's where the little striations happen on those. So now you know how solar systems form, and You're welcome. I'm going to make you all like geologists and astronomers by the time I'm done with this. Okay. Whew. I got like 5 more minutes in me, and then I got to go eat a meal or something. So let's see. We got what do we have here? Tease Johnson, Houston. What's the best way to get past the mental block that puts you in depression? Oh man, I don't know. I've generally in my life I've not been a depressed person, and the closest I've had to like a depression was actually this past winter. I it wasn't like I was sad, but I didn't do anything. Normally my winters I spend a couple $1,000. I go to Switzerland and I see my friends for a few weeks, and I go skiing, and it is like the greatest 2 weeks of my year, just eating cheese and dark chocolate and skiing. And the hot dogs at the Munga Hut are the greatest hot dogs I've ever had in my life. And those are like weird billionaires because the World Economic Forum's going on, and it's just a really cool place to be. And then the rest of the winter, every time it rains here in Seattle, I'm like, oh, it's snowing in the mountains. I get to go skiing again. And that's kind of how I spend my winters. But COVID resulted in like not just financial hardship, but in like didn't have my outlet of skiing. So all of a sudden I was in the rain for months at a time, and sun sets at 4 in the afternoon and comes up at 9 in the morning, and just was dark and rainy and cold and miserable, and I didn't get to go skiing. And I ended up having to spend quite a bit of money helping my roommates make it through the winter because they weren't able to work their jobs, and unemployment wasn't coming through the way it should. So like to conserve money and energy, I just did nothing, and I kind of became this soft blob of goo. And I finally got I got like a pooch for the first time in my life, and I finally got rid of it. Took me several months to lose like 20 pounds of goo, but I got rid of that. But man, getting over depression, I don't know. Like for me, it was having something to do. I like challenges. I like stuff to look forward to. I like to plot and plan, and I wasn't doing any of that last winter. It was just like sit in bed and never get up type thing. So the best way to get past it, I think it's different for everybody, but it can't hurt to have something to do during the day, to have a goal, to feel like you're going to accomplish something. Go to the garage and build a birdhouse, or cut a lawn, or help an old lady with groceries. Just getting out and doing something, connecting with people, I think is a great way to do it. But that's kind of situational and doesn't explain anything that could be happening brain chemistry wise. So, maybe, set those goals for yourself. Take on some hobbies, some projects or something, and get out there and meet people. But at the same time, like if you're feeling really depressed, you might need to talk to someone about it. And talking to someone about it can help alleviate, what the brain chemistry is going on in your head. But at the same time, medication. A lot of people will say, don't do that, but see a professional and see what they have to say. And don't just see somebody who's like, you need to be medicated. You want somebody who's going to see you as a whole human being and understand whatever is going on in your life, maybe affecting how you respond to it. Stress. I mean, the more stressed you are, the more you're going to feel depressed and worthless. So, find ways to take care of yourself. I wish I could just wave a magic wand and make anyone's depression go away, but it's there's work that has to be done, and I hope you can find it. I hope you can find a hobby that makes you happy, and you can find people to talk to about that stuff. I'm no expert. I've only had my 1 semester of psychology in college, and hopefully there's someone out there that can give you big help along the way. Richard Fortune. When the moon happens, I'll pay you to come to New Zealand so we do geology. Oh, hell yeah. I will go to New Zealand. I want to go to New Zealand so bad. One of my geology friends did a whole year in New Zealand during his undergrad and just He was the most annoying person in the entire world to watch Lord of the Rings with, because he's like, oh yeah, that spot's here. I've been there. I was there. I'm like, shut the hell up. I'm in Mordor right now, you idiot. Leave me alone. But I really want to go to New Zealand really bad. I've got a couple of friends that one of my friends married a woman from New Zealand, so they spend like half their year in each place, and they are so lucky. I may have to just like hide in their luggage at some point. But thank you, Richard. I will take you up on the offer. I will go to New Zealand. I also want to like ski down a mountain bike down to the ocean, and then go surfing all in one day. That's kind of a goal in my life. Okay. This is Natsuka Hirabayashi. He's talking about Marin. That's talk someone asked about earlier. 240% shorted at one point. Holy smokes. No options and isn't dumping. It's holding the line. Next week should be huge. Okay, so this is not financial advice, but Natsuka is talking about that Marin was shorted quite a bit. I mean, they went from like $2 to, what was it, 20 something dollars in just a last month. So, and they're just like costs. There's not enough float for options to be formed. Okay. Rogue Death medicates with coffee, and he's not joking about that. Caffeine is a drug. It affects your brain chemistry, and there's lots of weird studies that happen that people discover, like people who get caffeine in their lives live longer, are happier. Although I know some really miserable coffee drinkers out there, though. Oh, Get Real's talking about the. Have you seen the cave in Mexico that had the hottest water on Earth and made huge crystals and drained out? Yeah, there was discovered in the 90s. What were the crystals? Selenite or something like that. The crystals are like bigger than a school bus, and you can like walk out and stand on. The room that they're in is completely poisonous. You have to like wear this whole gas mask apparatus to go in and see the crystals. If you can find pictures from the old National Geographic article when it was discovered, they are so cool. I can't remember the name of the crystals that are in there, but it might be selenite, might be something along those lines. They're huge. They're 100, 200 feet long, as big around as a house. They're crazy. Natsuki, your uncle worked at Los Alamos? That's awesome. Fantastic. Brandon M., what's your thoughts about greening the desert? Well, we've done a lot of that. That's basically the entire Central Valley of California was a bleak desert wasteland, and then we sucked a bunch of water from the Colorado River and sprayed it to grow grapes and almonds and all sorts of things. I think if you have the water source, sure, but it shouldn't be at the expense of people further downriver. Like the fact that Americans have drained the Colorado River so much that it never reaches the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of California anymore, I think is wrong. We should figure out a way to make sure that ecosystem continues and that delta continues to get flooded with water all the time. There are places where you can green the desert more easily than the past. But at the same time, there's also desertification going on where we're doing the opposite. We're making steppes and forest into desert. It's happening a lot in sub-Saharan Africa where people need firewood to cook. So you have an explosion of population. You've got more and more people hiking further and further out into the wild to get trees to like cook their food and stay warm at night. And those treed areas are like 12 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than the desertified areas next door. So you cut down those trees, all of a sudden the temperature of that area gets hotter, it gets drier. There's a higher evapotranspiration of water that comes out of the soil. The soil gets more salty. It gets harder to grow food. And then people have to move further south, cutting down more trees to move further south. And so the Sahara Desert is growing and growing and growing across the continent of Africa as a result of humans basically cutting all the trees and the soil getting exposed to sunshine and all these salts coming to the surface of the soil. So if we can greenify that steppe at the southern end of the Sahara Desert and regenerate the ecosystems that were there, that would be a huge boon to the people who live in the area. and I would love to see large groups help fund some sort of solution to that. You know, Europe and the United States and North America have raped and plundered Africa so much. Africa is not a poor continent. They are a filthy, filthy rich continent full of poor people. We take all their resources and give them nothing for it, and then they're like, oh, they're so poor there. Well, it's because we took it all. we took it all and didn't give them anything. So we need to figure out some way to give back to the people of Africa for everything that they've given us or taken from them, and help replenish the steppe and those dry upland forests that are all across Africa where the desertification is happening. So yes, let's green that desert. Let's green the deserts that shouldn't exist. Let's figure out a way to get Lake Chad to fill up with water again. And there's problems, but solve them. This is Houston with a problem after all. Annie, oh thank you, Annie. That's so kind. I don't know if you can hear my cat. He's like screaming off in the back. You have food, you little monster. Susie Chi. Oops, sorry, I just clicked it off. William Moon, I'd like to invite you to my home and land in Lebanon to ski in the mountain while swimming by the beach and then go visit Gieta Grotto. Heck yeah! I actually had applied to do a master's degree in geology through American University in Beirut, but then there was like a Antifada again, and I was like, I don't know if going to Beirut right now would be the best thing in the world, so I ended up not following through on that degree. But I would love to go to Lebanon. That'd be awesome. I've always wanted to see Beirut, and it's the Paris of the Middle East. And another tangent story. Okay, this is one of those pretty weird stories. So I had a social studies teacher in high school, Mr. Miller Lane. And Mr. Miller Lane, he did this weird hybrid class, this kind of experiment, which was like current events / let's learn Aikido. He's kind of hippie. And in the course of this class, he was telling us the story about when his dad was on the cover of Time magazine. And the Civil War had just broken out in Lebanon. And the ambassador from the U.S. was getting recalled because back then the ambassador to Lebanon was kind of like one of those glorified posts that a big campaign donor would get. Like, hey, you give a lot of money to my presidential campaign, I'll make sure you are the ambassador to Lebanon. You get to stay in this beautiful city with all these beautiful people. And so some fancy person would get to be that person. So the ambassador to Lebanon is getting recalled, and Mr. Merlane's father is getting off the airplane, passing by them. So it's a picture of the two families as they go by. And Mr. Merlane's dad was like the badass State Department guy who goes in when there's a trouble zone to be the actual diplomat. And so his dad was on the cover of the magazine. Like a week later, I'm in my math class with Mrs. Getch. And Mrs. Getch is telling us about how she was on the cover of Time magazine when the Civil War broke out in Lebanon. There's a picture of her being carried by her mom onto the airplane as the new ambassador gets off the plane. It's like, wait a minute, do you realize that's your coworker's dad that was also in that picture? And they're like, what? So that's my Lebanon story. I don't know really. That's, what are the odds of that type of situation? It's like when I ran into my friend on the beach in Hawaii. What the hell are you doing here? Yeah, so I would love to go to Lebanon, Susie. Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, okay. Oh, the pee-pee poo-poo guys are back. At least they're not asking for my belly button anymore. Okay. Yeah, Maricopa County, fastest growing county. And yeah, it's too many people moving to the desert. I mean, it doesn't rain, which is awesome, but the only reason that place exists is because you're sucking water from elsewhere. Yeah. Houston dog behavior and training. Nestle and Coca-Cola in Africa. They do some gnarly stuff. How a lot of these big companies get their water sources to make their drinks are pretty freaky. Nestle is sucking away the groundwater out of Michigan, which is causing the levels in the Great Lakes to drop. And they're bottling it and sending it to grocery stores and stuff. Yeah, it's I don't know. I have a problem with bottled water. I use bottled water like a lot of times when I'm out in the desert because you got to take your water with you somehow, and sometimes you can't find a good faucet to do stuff. But I want to do the math on this. All right, I might tonight do a little math project, try to figure out how much of the fresh water in the United States is stored on grocery store and convenience store shelves. That'd be kind of interesting. How many cubic feet of water at any moment is like stored on a shelf in a store somewhere? Because so much water gets sucked out of the earth. You know, we've got like Arrowhead water in California is sucking groundwater out of the ground in a place that's in a drought, and then sending it off to all over the country to be sold. So we need like local source water or something that for those things. Okay. Do you think reality is a simulation? My dad's a Christian Scientist, so he thinks everything like it's all the Matrix. I don't know. I mean, in the end, aren't we all just like 8-pound bags of fat playing Human Simulator? That's kind of what we're doing all day long. It's like this weird ball of fat in here that's telling everything else to move around according to the computer program that's inside of me. I don't know. Burp, burp, burp. Getting a little deeper than I can answer there. Okay. All right. I might be done. It's 9 o'clock here. I've been on for 2.5 hours. My voice is starting to go. I'm a hungry man. I want to thank everyone so much for coming out on your Friday evening and being a complete Friday night winner with me. So, excellent. Thank you so much. Have a great night. I probably won't be able to do a stream tomorrow or Sunday because the holiday's coming up and I've got stuff to do. But I'll try to see if I can do one on Monday. So hopefully see everybody Monday if we can. I still need to finish my exit strategy video. I haven't finished the writing on that. It's been a weird week. But luckily, I'm not teaching my physics course this summer. I say that weirdly. Luckily, I don't have a job this summer. Not enough people signed up for my class. Like, no one wants to go to school this summer, so no physics class for me. And I got more time on my hands to make more videos for you guys, so we're doing that. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. I appreciate it so much. I love that you spent time with me, and I've got my homework in front of me. I got to look up Marin. I got to look up BSQR. I got to look up Sensonic, Dexicom, and the credit default swap antitrust stuff. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later. And the video should be up to be watched anytime you want here in a second. All right. Bye-bye.